She thought she was delivering Christmas dinner, until the man behind the door decided she was the one thing he wasn't willing to let leave. Before we dive into this story, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Christmas Eve was supposed to smell like cinnamon and pine, like home and rest and the end of something difficult. Instead, it smelled like industrial kitchen cleaner and reheated gravy as she tied her apron tighter and stared at the order slip in her hand. Last delivery of the night. She read the address again, frowning. No apartment number. No gate code listed, just a name written in clean, deliberate handwriting, and an address that pointed far beyond the city lights, up into the hills where the roads narrowed and the houses stopped pretending they were part of the world. "Anyone know this place?" she asked, holding the slip up to the kitchen. Her supervisor barely glanced at it. Private client, paid triple, tip already cleared. That should have been enough to quiet the knot forming in her chest. Triple pay meant rent paid on time. It meant groceries that weren't counted coin by coin. It meant saying yes instead of sorry when her little sister asked for something small and unnecessary. Just one more job before freedom, she told herself. She loaded the insulated carriers into her car, steam fogging the cold air as she shut the trunk. The city glittered behind her as she pulled onto the road, Christmas lights blurring into streaks of gold and red. Radios played cheerful songs about snow and miracles, but the further she drove, the quieter everything became. Streetlights thinned, houses spaced out. The road climbed and twisted, trees crowding closer like silent witnesses. She turned the radio off. The address led her through iron gates that opened without explanation. No guard booth, no intercom. Just a smooth, silent welcome that felt more like a test than an invitation. Her headlights swept over manicured grounds dusted with early snow, the mansion appearing slowly through the dark like something carved out of the night itself. Too big. Too quiet. She parked near the entrance, engine idling as she sat there for a moment longer than necessary, hands tight around the steering wheel. You're tired, that's all. Go in, deliver the food, leave. She grabbed the carriers and stepped out into the cold. Snow crunched beneath her boots, the air sharp enough to sting her lungs. The front door was massive, dark wood framed by stone. No wreath, no lights. No hint of Christmas warmth. She knocked. The sound echoed longer than it should have. For a brief, unsettling moment, she wondered if no one would answer. Then the door opened. He filled the doorway in a way that made the world feel suddenly smaller. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in black like it was a uniform rather than a choice. His hair was dark, neatly styled. His face calm in the way men only were when they were used to being obeyed. His eyes settled on her with quiet intensity, sharp and assessing, not surprised to see her, but interested. Yes? His voice was low, controlled, unhurried. She swallowed. Catering delivery? Christmas dinner? His gaze flicked briefly to the carriers, then back to her face. The pause stretched just long enough to make her aware of her own breathing, her cold, reddened cheeks, the way her pulse jumped under his attention. Come in, he said, stepping aside. The warmth inside hit her immediately, along with the scent of wood smoke and something expensive she couldn't name. The interior was elegant but restrained. Stone floors, high ceilings, minimal decoration. No tree, no garlands, no sign anyone planned to celebrate anything. She set the food down where he gestured, her movements careful, professional. She listed off the items automatically, hands shaking just enough to annoy her. Everything is included: dessert, wine pairing, instructions for reheating. I won't need instructions, he interrupted gently. Her eyes lifted to his, and something unreadable passed between them. Not flirtation, not threat. Recognition. She finished quickly, eager to be gone. I'll just need a signature. He took the tablet from her, fingers brushing hers for half a second longer than necessary. The contact sent a strange warmth through her, unexpected and unwelcome. As he signed, his eyes never left her face. You're working late, he observed. It's Christmas Eve, she said. People want things last minute. A faint curve touched his mouth. Not quite a smile. "And you?" She hesitated. "I want to go home." Something in his expression shifted at that, darkened, focused. "You should leave soon," he said. "The weather is changing." As if summoned by his words, wind rattled against the windows, snow beginning to fall heavier outside. She nodded, forcing a polite smile. "Merry Christmas." For a heartbeat, he looked almost startled. Then the door closed behind her with a heavy finality that echoed through the quiet hall, and she stepped back into the cold, unaware that this delivery, this man, was about to cost her far more than time, and give her far more than she ever expected. She had told herself the moment would pass the second she stepped back into the cold, that whatever unease she felt inside the mansion would fade once she was in her car again, engine running, heater blasting, the world reduced to roads and radio static. But as she walked back toward the entrance to retrieve the signed tablet she'd forgotten, curse her distracted mind, she realized the feeling hadn't loosened its grip. If anything, it had deepened. The door opened before she knocked this time. He stood there as if he'd been waiting. Up close, the effect was worse. His presence didn't just occupy the doorway, it dominated it. The kind of stillness that didn't need movement to command attention. He was no longer just tall, he was imposing in a way that made her instinctively straighten her posture, as though her body recognized authority before her mind could question it. "You forgot this," he said, holding out the tablet. "Thank you," she replied quickly, taking it. Their fingers brushed again, and this time she felt it more clearly. A spark of awareness that had nothing to do with cold. She should have turned and left. Instead, she lingered. The silence stretched, thick and deliberate. His gaze didn't wander the way most men's did. It stayed on her face, her eyes, studying her with an intensity that made her hyper-aware of every small movement she made. "You're uncomfortable," he observed calmly. Her breath caught. "I'm fine." People often say that when they're not. Something about the way he said it, without accusation, without interest in pressing the point, made her bristle. "It's late. I should go." "Yes," he agreed. "You should." But he didn't step aside, didn't open the door wider, didn't break eye contact. Snow blew past behind her, the wind stronger now, sharper. "You live alone?" he asked. The question was casual, too casual. She stiffened. "I don't answer personal questions from clients." A pause, then a slow nod. "Good." That surprised her. "Good?" "Boundaries are useful," he said, "especially in dangerous situations." Her pulse quickened. "This isn't dangerous." His gaze flicked briefly toward the dark road beyond the gates, the falling snow swallowing everything beyond a few feet of visibility. When he looked back at her, his expression had hardened. "The road will be impassable soon," he said, "if it isn't already. I drove up here just fine." "And the weather has worsened since then." She hesitated, irritation sparking. "Are you suggesting I stay?" "I'm suggesting you consider your safety." The word lingered between them. "I'll be careful," she said. Careful is not the same as protected. The way he said protected made it sound less like reassurance and more like a promise, one she wasn't sure she wanted. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, making her jump. No signal. She swallowed. "I appreciate the concern, but I really need to leave." For a moment, he didn't respond. Then he stepped back, finally clearing the doorway. "Very well," he said. "Drive slowly." She passed him, aware of his proximity, the subtle scent of something dark and clean, something that didn't belong in a kitchen or a delivery van. Power clung to him like a second skin. At the threshold, she paused. "Why did you order dinner?" she asked before she could stop herself. His eyes sharpened, a flicker of something unreadable passing through them. "Because I don't celebrate Christmas," he said, "and because tonight, I didn't want to be alone." The honesty of it struck her harder than any threat could have. She nodded once, unsure what to say. "Merry Christmas," she repeated softly. This time his reaction was different. Something almost human crossed his face before disappearing just as quickly. "And to you," he replied. She stepped into the snow, the door closing behind her with a quiet finality that echoed far too loudly in her chest. As she walked toward her car, she felt his gaze on her back, unblinking, measuring, as if she had just crossed a line neither of them could see. But both could feel. The car didn't start. At first, she thought it was the cold. She turned the key again, listening to the hollow click that echoed too loudly in the quiet driveway. Snow thickened around the tires, flakes clinging to the windshield as if the world were slowly sealing her in. "Come on," she muttered, trying again. Nothing. Her breath fogged the glass. The road beyond the gates had vanished into white, the darkness swallowing everything that wasn't immediately illuminated by the headlights. Her phone showed one thin bar, then none. Panic stirred, low and unwelcome. She sat there for a long moment, fingers tight around the steering wheel, before doing the one thing she hadn't wanted to do. She got out of the car. The snow had already erased her footprints by the time she reached the door again. This time, when she knocked, it opened almost immediately, as if he'd been standing just on the other side. "I can't leave," she said before he could speak. "My car won't start." He studied her for a second, gaze sweeping over her flushed face, the tension in her shoulders, the way she tried to stand like she wasn't unsettled. "I know," he said calmly. That should have frightened her. Instead, it felt inevitable. "Come inside," he added, stepping back. The door closed behind her with a heavy, deliberate sound. The warmth wrapped around her again, but it didn't comfort her this time. It only sharpened her awareness of the space she'd entered. The house was too quiet. Not the cozy, lived-in quiet of people asleep or relaxing. This was a silence that felt intentional, engineered. Thick walls, deep carpets. Sound absorbed rather than softened. No television murmuring. No music. No hum of a refrigerator or distant voices. Just the faint crackle of a fire somewhere far away, and the subtle sound of her own breathing. She set the catering carriers down again, unsure what else to do with her hands. "You can wait here until the storm passes," he said, "or until the road clears enough for my driver to take you." "You have a driver," she said before thinking. Yes, of course he did. She glanced around more carefully now. The mansion wasn't cold in temperature, but it lacked warmth in every other way. The furniture was elegant, expensive, arranged with precision rather than comfort. No family photos, no clutter, no evidence of anyone living here beyond necessity. It felt like a place designed to impress and to intimidate. "Do you live here alone?" she asked. "For the most part." And that answer carried more weight than the words suggested. She moved slowly, as if afraid to disturb the space, her boots making almost no sound on the stone floor. The dining table was set perfectly, plates aligned, silverware untouched, candles unlit. The food she'd delivered sat like an offering no one intended to consume. "You didn't order dinner because you were hungry," she said quietly. His eyes flicked to her, sharp with interest. "No." "Then why?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he walked past her, unbuttoning his coat with measured movements, setting it aside as if time itself bent to his pace. "Because Christmas is inconvenient," he said at last. "It makes people reckless. Sentimental." She frowned. "And food fixes that?" "No," he replied. "Company does." The words settled between them, heavy and deliberate. She felt suddenly very aware that she was the only other person in this massive house, that no one would overhear them, that whatever happened here would remain contained within stone walls and falling snow. "Do you often invite strangers in?" she asked, attempting lightness. "No." "Then why me?" He turned to face her fully now, and the look in his eyes made her breath hitch. Not hunger, not lust. Focus. "Because you didn't ask questions that mattered," he said. "And you didn't look at me like you wanted something." She swallowed. "I just wanted to do my job." "And yet," he said softly, "you came back." The implication hung there, unsettling. "I didn't have a choice," she said. "None of us ever do," he replied. The firelight flickered across his face, carving shadows that made him look older, harder, dangerous in a way that had nothing to do with raised voices or threats. She realized then that the house wasn't empty because it lacked people. It was empty because people didn't stay. And for reasons she couldn't yet name, she understood with chilling clarity that the dinner wasn't the delivery that mattered. She was. She told herself she wouldn't panic. That panic never helped. Not when bills piled up, not when shifts ran late, not when life kept tightening its grip and daring her to breathe anyway. Panic wasted energy, and she couldn't afford that. So she focused on the practical. "My car just needs a jump," she said, glancing toward the door as another gust of wind rattled the tall windows. Snow slapped against the glass harder now, thick flakes blurring the world beyond the mansion walls. "I can call roadside assistance, or a tow." He didn't laugh, didn't dismiss her optimism. He simply reached for his phone. She watched as his thumb moved across the screen, his expression unreadable. A pause, another. Then he lowered the phone slowly. "No signal," he said. Her stomach tightened. She checked her own phone again, even though she already knew. Still nothing. Not even emergency bars. The battery icon blinked red, as if mocking her. "It'll come back," she said, more to herself than to him. Storms mess with reception all the time. "Yes," he agreed calmly. "In the city." Her eyes lifted to his. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means this property sits above most service grids. It's intentional." "Intentional?" Her voice sharpened. "Why would anyone want that?" His gaze held hers, steady and unflinching. "Privacy." The word landed differently now that the snow outside was thick enough to swallow headlights whole. She moved toward the window again, peering out. The driveway she'd driven up less than an hour ago had vanished beneath an unbroken blanket of white. Tire tracks already erased. The gates were barely visible, dark shapes swallowed by the storm. "How bad is it?" she asked quietly. "Bad enough," he replied, joining her at the window but keeping a careful distance. "County already closed the lower roads. The upper ones will follow." "And the plows?" "They won't come this far up until morning. Possibly later." Morning. The word stretched in her mind, suddenly much longer than it had any right to be. "So I'm stuck," she said. "For now." She turned to face him. "You knew this could happen." "Yes." "And you didn't say anything?" "I did," he said evenly. "I told you to leave soon." She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Anger flared, sharp and uncomfortable. "You could have insisted. You could have stopped me from walking out there in the first place." "I don't control people," he said, and something in his tone made her believe him. "I offer information. They choose what to do with it." "And now?" she challenged. "And now," he said, "the choice has been made." The storm roared louder, wind howling around the mansion like it was testing the walls. Somewhere deeper in the house, a door thudded softly as pressure shifted. Her heart began to race despite her best efforts. "Okay," she said, forcing calm. "Fine, I'll wait it out. Sit by the fire. Drink some water. As soon as the road's open, I leave." He inclined his head. "That's reasonable." The word sent an unexpected ripple of relief through her. She shrugged out of her coat, hanging it over the back of a chair, suddenly aware of how cold she'd been without realizing it. The house felt warmer now, the fire crackling louder, shadows dancing along the walls. Still no Christmas lights. No tree. No music. Just the storm, and the quiet, and him. "Do you have guests often?" she asked, trying to fill the silence. "No." "Family?" "No." She nodded slowly. That explains the lack of holiday cheer. Something unreadable flickered across his face. "Cheer has never served me well." She didn't press. Some truths felt sharp enough to cut. Another check of her phone. Still nothing. She moved closer to the window again, watching as snow continued to fall. Relentless, beautiful, merciless. "This isn't just a storm," she murmured. "It's sealing everything in."
"Yes, he said softly behind her. "It does that."
The way he said it made her skin prickle. She turned. "You're very calm about all this." "I plan for disruptions. People don't usually plan for being snowed in with a stranger. I don't usually let strangers cross my threshold." The air between them shifted, charged with something she couldn't quite name. Awareness. Tension. The quiet understanding that the rules she'd walked in with no longer applied. The roads were closed. The signal was gone. The night had tightened its grip. Escape was no longer a decision. It was a waiting game. And somehow, she knew, deep in her chest, that the storm outside wasn't the only thing changing the rules. She was pouring herself a glass of water when the phone rang. Not the soft, polite chime most people used. This was a low, vibrating sound that seemed to cut through the quiet of the house, sharp enough to make her flinch. He didn't move immediately. He watched her over the rim of his glass as if gauging her reaction first, as if her presence had somehow altered the weight of the call. Then he answered. "Yes," he said. One word. Controlled. Final. She couldn't hear the voice on the other end, only the cadence of it. Urgent, fast, threaded with tension. He turned slightly away, not out of courtesy, she realized, but out of habit. Some conversations weren't meant to be overheard. Some didn't need to be. Italian spilled from his mouth now, low and precise. Not angry, not rushed, dangerous in its restraint. Her fingers tightened around the glass. She wasn't eavesdropping. She didn't need to. The shift in the air told her everything. The way his shoulders squared. The way the room itself seemed to hold its breath. "No," he said quietly. "Not tonight." A pause. "Because I said so." Another pause. Longer this time. When he ended the call, he didn't put the phone away immediately. He stared at the dark screen for a moment, jaw tight, before sliding it into his pocket like a weapon sheathed. "Everything okay?" she asked, hating how small her voice sounded. "Yes," he replied automatically. Then he corrected himself. "No." The honesty startled her. Before she could ask anything else, headlights flared outside. Bright, sudden, cutting through the curtain of falling snow. One pair became two. Then three. She stepped closer to the window. Black SUVs rolled through the gates like they owned the night, tires crunching with deliberate precision. They parked in perfect alignment, engines still running, lights on. Doors opened almost simultaneously. Men stepped out, not dressed for the cold, not hurried. Coats pulled back just enough for her to see what sat beneath them. Dark metal, unmistakable even from a distance. Her pulse spiked. "They're here because of the storm," she said quickly, grasping for reason. "Security or—" "They're here because of me," he said. The front door opened without a knock. She spun, heart hammering. 3 men entered, boots wet with snow, eyes sharp, movements disciplined. They stopped the moment they saw her. Not surprise, calculation. One of them spoke first. "We didn't expect company." "No," he replied calmly. "You weren't meant to." The man inclined his head slightly. "Understood, boss." The word hit her like ice water. Boss, not sir, not Mr. Anything. Boss. Her breath caught. She felt it then. The click of understanding sliding into place, rearranging everything she'd seen and felt since the door first opened. The quiet authority. The way the house was built like a fortress. The isolation. The calm. This wasn't just a powerful man. This was power itself. One of the men glanced at her again, then back to him. His voice dropped. She's staying," he said, cutting him off. No hesitation, no explanation. The men nodded immediately. Something in her chest tightened. "Staying?" she repeated. He turned to her, expression unreadable but steady.
The roads are worse than expected. My men will remain here until morning.
For protection? She asked. Yes.
For who? She pressed.
His gaze held hers.
Both of us.
The men dispersed through the house, their presence suddenly everywhere, and nowhere at once. She heard doors close, footsteps fade, radios murmuring quietly in another language. She felt very, very small. "Who are you?" she asked finally. He considered her for a long moment, as if weighing the cost of truth.
"My name," he said, "is Alessandro Moretti."
The name meant nothing to her, until it did. Memory sparked, snippets of news headlines overheard in cafes, whispered conversations that stopped when someone approached, a name spoken with caution and never too loudly. Her stomach dropped. "That's not possible," she whispered.
"It is," he said simply.
"You're—" She couldn't finish the sentence.
"Yes."
Fear crept in now, cold and sharp. Not panic. Something worse. Awareness. "I didn't know," she said quickly. "If I had—" "You would have still delivered the food," he interrupted gently, "because you don't walk away from your responsibilities." That wasn't reassurance. It was observation. "Why didn't you tell me?" she demanded. "Because you didn't ask," he said. "And because knowing sooner wouldn't have changed the storm." The house felt different now. Smaller. Heavier. Every locked door, every shadow suddenly full of meaning. "I'm not safe here," she said. His expression hardened, not with anger, but resolve.
"You are safer here than anywhere else tonight."
The words should have comforted her. Instead, they terrified her. Because she believed him. And because she now understood that the man who had ordered Christmas dinner didn't fear the storm. He feared what would happen if anyone else found her first. The house changed after that, not in any obvious way. The fire still burned low and steady. The lights remained warm, carefully placed. The storm outside continued its relentless fall, snow piling higher against the windows, like a living thing pressing inward. But the atmosphere had shifted, subtle and unmistakable, like a line had been crossed that could not be erased. She felt it in the way the men moved. They didn't linger near her, but they didn't ignore her either. Always positioned just far enough away to be unobtrusive, just close enough to intervene. Doors that had been open earlier were now quietly closed, not slammed, not locked in front of her. Just shut. Alessandro noticed her noticing.
"You're safe,"
he said, his voice low, controlled, as he poured her a cup of tea she hadn't asked for, but found herself accepting.
"No one here will harm you."
"That's not what I'm afraid of," she replied, fingers curling around the warm porcelain. His eyes flicked to her face, sharp with interest. "Then tell me." She hesitated. "How did you explain the feeling of being wrapped in silk threads that could tighten at any moment?" "This doesn't feel temporary anymore," she said finally. "It feels managed." He didn't deny it. "Chaos kills people," he said calmly. "Order keeps them alive." "And where do I fit into that?" she asked.
"You're under my protection."
The phrase sent a chill through her despite the heat of the fire. Protection sounded generous, noble, even. But it also implied ownership, responsibility, control, the kind that didn't ask permission. "I didn't agree to that," she said quietly. "No," he acknowledged, "but the circumstances didn't ask either." She stood, unable to sit still any longer, and paced toward the window. Snow pressed so heavily against the glass now that it muted the sound of the wind. The outside world felt distant, unreal. "Can I leave?" she asked without turning. A pause. "Yes," he said, "when it's safe." "That's not an answer." "It's the only honest one." She turned back to him. "You decide what safe means." "I do," he agreed. The ease with which he said it made her breath catch. "I won't force you to stay in a room," he continued, as if reading her thoughts. "I won't lock you away, but I won't allow you to walk into danger either." "Danger because of the storm," she said. "And because of me." The truth settled between them like ash. "You didn't ask for this," he said quietly. "You delivered food. You did your job. You should be home right now." "Then let me go," she said, the plea sharper than she intended. He crossed the room slowly, stopping a careful distance away. Not looming, not retreating. "If you step outside tonight," he said, "you won't make it 10 miles before someone notices your car stopped on the road. People watch these hills. They recognize unfamiliar vehicles. And now," his gaze softened fractionally, "they know you were here." Her pulse thudded painfully in her ears. "You're saying I'm a liability," she whispered. "No," he said firmly. "You're a responsibility." That was worse. She hugged her arms around herself, suddenly aware of how small she felt in this enormous house built for power, not comfort. "I didn't choose to be part of your world."
"I know," he said, "and I will not punish you for that."
The fire crackled softly, the sound almost intimate in the heavy silence. "I will give you space," he continued. "A room, privacy. You can sleep, eat, rest. In the morning, when the road's clear, we'll reassess." "And if I decide I want to leave then?" His jaw tightened just slightly. "Then I will ensure you leave safely." She searched his face, looking for deceit, for threat, for something monstrous. She found none. Only certainty. Only control so absolute it didn't need to be shouted. "Why do you care?" she asked finally. "I'm no one to you." His gaze lingered on her longer than before. "No," he said slowly. "You're not." The implication settled deep in her chest, unsettling and dangerous. A man passed quietly through the hall behind her, checking something she couldn't see. A lock clicked somewhere distant. Not near her, not obvious, but present. She realized then that hospitality didn't always wear chains. Sometimes it wore warmth. Calm voices. Gentle words. Sometimes it didn't feel like a cage at all, until you realized you no longer held the key. The candles burned low, their flames steady despite the storm rattling the windows, as if even the wind outside knew better than to intrude too loudly here. The food sat untouched between them, perfectly plated, still warm, carefully prepared for a celebration that was never meant to happen. She noticed it first, the way Alessandro hadn't taken a single bite. Not when she'd sat down. Not when she'd tried to fill the silence with small talk about the drive, the snow, the ridiculousness of delivering Christmas dinner to a fortress on a hill. He had poured wine, yes. He had made sure she ate. But his own plate remained pristine, like an offering left for a ghost. "You're not hungry," she said softly. He lifted his glass, watching the dark red liquid catch the candlelight. "Hunger is selective." She frowned. "That doesn't make sense." "It does," he replied, "once you learn what it costs to satisfy it." The words lingered, heavy and deliberate. She set her fork down, suddenly aware that whatever this conversation was becoming, it wasn't small talk. "You don't celebrate Christmas," she said. "You said that earlier." "No." "Why?" For a long moment he said nothing. The silence stretched, thick but not uncomfortable. More like a door he was deciding whether to open. Finally he spoke. "Christmas is a time for mercy," he said quietly. "For forgiveness. For pretending the world is gentler than it is." She waited. "I grew up believing that," he continued. "My mother insisted on it. Candles, music, food prepared hours in advance. She said if you filled a house with warmth, nothing bad could enter." His mouth curved faintly, but there was no humor in it. She was wrong. Her chest tightened. "When I was 17, he said, voice steady, a man we trusted came to our table on Christmas Eve. He ate our food, kissed my mother's cheek, told my father we were family." Alessandro's fingers tightened around the stem of his glass. "He left after midnight," he continued, and before dawn, our house was on fire. She inhaled sharply. My mother didn't make it out, he said. Neither did my younger brother. The words landed with terrifying calm. She felt tears prick her eyes, but didn't look away, didn't interrupt. Somehow she knew that if she did, the moment would shatter, and he would never speak of it again. The man who betrayed us, Alessandro went on, did it because my father trusted the idea of peace more than the reality of power. The candlelight carved shadows across his face, making him look older, harder. A man shaped by survival rather than time. My father survived, he said. Barely. He taught me what mercy really costs. She swallowed. And Christmas? I learned that comfort makes people careless, he said. That warmth invites knives. That celebration creates openings. He looked at the untouched food, then back at her. So, I stopped allowing myself comfort. The confession sat heavy between them. You didn't order dinner for yourself, she said slowly. You ordered it because... Because routine keeps men alive, he said. And because on nights like this, the absence of ritual feels louder than its presence. She hesitated, then asked the question that had been forming since the moment she'd stepped into his house. And tonight? His gaze softened, just slightly. Tonight, I broke my rule. Her heart skipped. Why? She asked. Because you didn't look at me like I was untouchable, he said, or like I was something to fear. You looked at me like I was human. The words sounded unfamiliar on his tongue. She felt something shift inside her, something dangerous and tender all at once. You are human. He studied her, as if weighing the truth of that statement. That is not how my world sees me. And how do you see yourself? A pause. As someone who cannot afford comfort, he said quietly, because comfort leads to loss. She reached out without thinking, her fingers brushing the edge of his sleeve. The contact was brief, tentative, but his entire body stilled, like a predator startled by kindness. Maybe, she said softly, comfort isn't the enemy. Maybe betrayal is. For a moment, he didn't respond. His gaze dropped to where her hand hovered, then lifted to her face. Be careful, he said, not unkindly. Offering comfort to a man like me is not without consequence. She withdrew her hand, heart pounding. I'm already here. Yes, he seemed to say. You are. The candles burned lower. The food remained untouched. And for the first time in years, Alessandro Moretti sat at a Christmas table and allowed himself to remember what warmth had once felt like, and why he had sworn never to reach for it again. The first sound was so subtle, she almost missed it. Not the wind. That had been howling for hours. Not the crackle of the fire. This was different. A low, distant hum that didn't belong to the storm, vibrating faintly through the stone beneath her feet. Alessandro heard it instantly. His body went still in a way that had nothing to do with fear, and everything to do with readiness. The warmth that had briefly softened his expression vanished, replaced by something sharper, colder, deadly. Go upstairs, he said. The abruptness startled her. What? Now, he repeated, already moving, his hand lifting not to touch her, but to guide her momentum. Second door on the left. Stay inside. Lock it. What's happening? Her heart began to pound. His gaze flicked toward the windows, then to the hallway beyond. They shouldn't have come in this weather, he said quietly. But storms make people desperate. The hum grew louder. Engines. She turned just in time to see headlights slice through the snow beyond the glass. 2, then 4, then more, approaching with purposeful slowness. Not lost. Not accidental. Found. They're here for you, she whispered. Yes. And me? His jaw tightened. They don't know about you. Yet. A sharp knock echoed through the house. Not at the front door, but somewhere lower. A service entrance, she realized. One most people didn't know existed. Alessandro moved with terrifying calm. He spoke into his phone in rapid Italian, issuing commands that carried the weight of inevitability. Men answered back immediately. Doors opened and closed with controlled urgency. The house, once silent, came alive like a machine waking from sleep. She stood frozen. "Upstairs," he said again, turning to her. His voice softened just slightly. "Please." That word, please, cut deeper than any command. "I'm not leaving you," she said, surprising both of them. "You will," he replied more firmly now, "because if they realize you're here, you become leverage, and I will not allow that." Another knock, louder this time. "Alessandro!" a voice called from outside, distorted by the storm. "We know you're in there?" The name sent ice through her veins. "You don't answer," she whispered. "I never do," he said. He moved toward a concealed panel in the wall, pressing something she hadn't noticed before. Metal slid silently. A weapon emerged, sleek and dark, as if it had always been waiting. Her stomach twisted. "You said you wouldn't force me into your world." "I won't," he said, loading the weapon with practiced ease. "But my world has a habit of crashing into others." The knocking stopped. For half a second, the house held its breath. Then glass shattered. The sound was violent, explosive, breaking the fragile boundary between inside and out. Shouts followed. Footsteps. Chaos trying to claw its way in. Alessandro positioned himself in front of her without hesitation, his body a barrier she hadn't asked for but instinctively trusted. "Go," he said urgently. "No." His eyes flashed. "If you stay, I will not be able to protect you." "You already are," she said, voice shaking but resolute. "By standing here." Another crash. A gunshot echoed somewhere distant, answered immediately by another. The house trembled, not physically, but in presence. Power colliding with power. Alessandro cursed softly under his breath. "They're testing me," he said, "seeing how far I'll go." "For what?" His gaze locked on hers, fierce and unguarded. "For you." The realization stole her breath. "You didn't mean to wander into my life," he continued, voice low and dangerous. "But now that you're here, they think you matter." "I do matter," she said, before fear could silence her. Something in his expression broke and hardened at the same time. "Yes, he said. "You do." He made a choice then. She felt it as clearly as if he'd spoken it aloud. Instead of moving toward the advancing threat, Alessandro turned her gently but decisively toward the stairs. "I can end this quickly," he said, "but only if you are out of reach." "And if I don't go?" His mouth curved into something grim and lethal. "Then there will be war." Another explosion of sound rocked the lower level. She grabbed his sleeve. "Promise me you'll come back." He covered her hand with his, warm and steady despite the violence closing in around them. "I always survive," he said. "But tonight, I intend to win." He released her and turned toward the darkness without another word, becoming something else entirely, a force shaped by blood and command. She ran upstairs as ordered, heart hammering, the sounds of battle echoing below. And as she locked the door behind her, one truth burned brighter than fear. The storm had not brought danger to his door. It had reminded his enemies exactly where to find him, and what he was willing to destroy to keep her safe. Silence returned in fragments. Not all at once, but slowly, cautiously, like an animal testing the air after a storm. The gunfire faded first, then the shouts. Then even the wind seemed to lower its voice, snow falling softer now, settling instead of attacking. She didn't know how long she stayed locked in the room. Minutes felt like hours. Every sound made her flinch. The creak of the house settling, the distant murmur of voices she couldn't place. She sat on the edge of the bed, knees drawn to her chest, counting her breaths, replaying the moment Alessandro had turned away from her and walked toward danger without hesitation. For her. When the knock finally came, it was gentle. "Finita," his voice said through the door. "It's over."
She unlocked it with shaking fingers.
Alessandro stood in the hallway, jacket gone, shirt darkened with melting snow. And something darker she refused to name. There was a cut along his knuckles, blood dried at his temple, but his posture was steady, his eyes sharp and alive. "You're hurt," she said immediately. "It's nothing," he replied, and this time she believed him. Not because it wasn't serious, but because pain was something he'd learned to carry quietly. She stepped toward him without thinking, then stopped herself, suddenly unsure of where the line was now. Protector, captor, savior, threat. He noticed the hesitation. "I won't touch you," he said softly. "Not unless you ask."
The words loosened something tight in her chest.
Downstairs, the house bore subtle evidence of violence. Shattered glass already swept aside, furniture shifted, the air still charged with adrenaline. Men moved through the space with efficient calm, repairing, cleaning, restoring order, as if chaos were just another task on a checklist.
Alessandro guided her to the dining room, pulling out a chair for her before sitting across the table instead of beside her. Distance. Deliberate.
The candles had burned low. Wax pooled and hardened like frozen tears. The untouched food was gone now, cleared away during the chaos. Midnight had passed. "You should know," he said quietly, "that this will not be spoken of outside these walls." "I wouldn't know how," she replied. A faint smile touched his mouth. "Good." He leaned back slightly, studying her with an intensity that felt different now. Not predatory, not guarded. Evaluating. "The roads will clear by morning," he said. "My driver can take you anywhere you wish. Home. Work. Away from this." Her heart thudded. "And after that?" she asked. "After that," he said, "your life continues. Quiet. Ordinary." The word sounded strange coming from him. She waited. "That is one option," he continued. "And the other?" He exhaled slowly, as if choosing his words with care. "You stay." Her breath caught. "Not as a prisoner," he added immediately. "Not as an obligation. You stay under my protection, willingly. You accept that what happened tonight does not disappear with the snow." "That people will know I was here," she said. "Yes." "That I'll never just be anonymous again." "Yes." "That danger will follow you," she whispered, "and anything close to you." His gaze darkened. "That is the cost." She swallowed hard. "And the benefit?" His eyes softened, not weak, not uncertain, but honest in a way that felt far more dangerous. "You will never be unprotected again," he said. "Never unseen, never disposable." The words hit harder than any gunshot. "I won't lie to you," he continued. "If you stay, you will not be ordinary. People will watch you, fear you, respect you. Some will resent you." "Because of you," she said. "Because of what you represent," he corrected. "Choice." The house was quiet now. The storm outside had softened to a steady fall, snow drifting like ash. "And if I leave," she asked, "will you forget me?" Something flickered across his face, too fast to name. "No," he said simply, "but I will let you go." The weight of that settled between them. She thought of her small apartment, her predictable routines, the life that had fit her like a coat she'd never questioned because it was all she'd known. She thought of the moment he'd stepped between her and danger without hesitation, of the way he'd spoken her safety into existence as if it were law. "You said earlier," she murmured, "that none of us ever really have a choice." Alessandro leaned forward slightly. "Tonight, you do." Outside, the clock chimed softly. Midnight had come and gone, and whatever she chose next would determine whether this night remained a story she survived, or the beginning of something that would change her forever. Morning arrived quietly, not with sunlight pouring through the windows or birdsong breaking the silence, but with a pale, muted glow that softened the sharp edges of the night before. The storm had exhausted itself. Snow lay thick and untouched across the grounds, a white world holding its breath. She stood by the window, wrapped in a borrowed sweater that still carried Alessandro's warmth. Somewhere below, men moved through the estate, their footsteps distant, respectful, giving her space she hadn't asked for but was grateful to receive. Behind her, the house felt different now, less like a fortress, more like a place where something had ended, and something else waited to begin. "You didn't sleep," Alessandro said quietly. She turned. He stood in the doorway, jacket exchanged for a simple black sweater. The sharp lines of power softened but not erased. The cuts had been cleaned. The blood was gone. Only the shadows under his eyes remained, evidence of a man who carried far more than he showed. "I tried," she said, "but my mind wouldn't stop." He nodded as if he'd expected nothing else. "The car will be ready soon." Soon. The word hovered between them. She took a breath. "Before that, can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Did you really need the dinner?" she asked softly. A corner of his mouth lifted, not quite a smile. "No." The admission felt strangely intimate. "I could have ordered from anywhere," he continued. "Sent someone else to receive it. That night, I was not hungry." Her heart tightened. "Then why—" "Because the house had been silent for too long," he said. "Because Christmas comes whether you invite it or not, and because sometimes you order a meal simply to remind yourself you're still capable of sitting at a table." She absorbed that, the loneliness beneath the power. "I wasn't meant to be the gift," she said slowly. "Was I?" Alessandro's gaze met hers, steady and unflinching. "You were never meant to be anything but yourself." She looked down at her hands, remembering how she'd arrived here with insulated bags and a rehearsed smile, focused on tips and schedules, and getting home before the snow got worse. She had walked into this house thinking she was delivering food. Instead, she had been seen. "No one has ever looked at me the way you did," she admitted. "Not like I was enough. Not without wanting me to be quieter, smaller, easier." His voice was low. "I don't want you smaller." "I know," she said. "That's what terrifies me." She turned back to the window. The road beyond the gates was faintly visible now, cleared just enough for passage. An exit. A return. "If I leave," she said, "I go back to being invisible." "You would be safe," he replied. "Safe," she echoed, "but unchanged." Silence stretched between them, not uncomfortable, just heavy with everything unsaid. "And if I stay?" she asked. Alessandro stepped closer, stopping at a respectful distance. "Then you accept that this world will touch you, that people will know your name, that you will never again be ordinary." She laughed softly. "I don't think I ever really was." His eyes warmed at that. "No, you were simply unnoticed." She turned to face him fully now. "I came here to deliver dinner," she said. "And somehow I became the only person in this house who didn't want anything from you." His jaw tightened. "That is precisely why you matter." She swallowed, emotion rising sharp and sudden. "If I walk away now, will you regret it?" "Yes," he said without hesitation, "but I will respect it." "And if I stay?" His voice softened. "Then I will protect you, not because I own you, but because you chose me." The words settled deep, heavy and warm. She took a step toward him. "I don't think the gift was ever the food," she said quietly. "And I don't think it was me either." He waited. "I think it was the choice," she finished. "To be seen. To be wanted, without being reshaped." Alessandro reached out slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. When she didn't, his hand rested lightly over hers, warm, grounding. "Stay," he said. Not as a command,
as an invitation.
Outside, the snow reflected the morning light, untouched and bright. She laced her fingers through his. "I'm not leaving," she said. And in that moment, she understood the truth. The dinner had never been the delivery that mattered. The real gift was this. A man who saw her as enough, and a choice that changed both their lives forever.